Have you ever been looking around a room and decided it needed something new to freshen it up? Well, a good and relatively inexpensive way would be to paint the room. Adding a new coat of paint to a room is a cheaper way than replacing furniture or flooring and can add subtle changes to the room and atmosphere. I have painted many rooms in my day because I get bored easily. Today we are going to talk about what steps are needed to be taken to prepare a room for painting. When deciding to paint a room, it is important to think about all the time involved in the project. You will probably end up with an unfinished project if not. There are many supplies needed to prepare a room for painting. Most people have nail holes or dents in their walls that can lead you to be unhappy with the finished product if not addressed. For the purpose of this speech, we are going to assume the wall we are talking about has holes and a small dent. We are going to go over the steps involved, which will include clearing the room, removing things from walls, fixing or patching holes and imperfections, taping, covering, and cleaning. You are going to need drywall mud or spackling. I prefer Drydex because it goes on pink and it dries white, which is more helpful when you're sanding. A spatula or putty knife, plastic or metal will work. Since the holes are from nails, we don't need a really large one. Plastic works fine. Sandpaper for after the mud dries. Fine grit preferably, as it doesn't tear up the drywall as bad. Painter's tape to mark off the trim and outlets. A drop cloth or a sheet. It can be anything old. It doesn't have to be really nice. Screwdriver to remove the outlet covers and light switch covers. The last thing you will need is warm water and a towel or cloth. Once you decide to move on to painting, you will need more supplies. These are just to prepare the room. Now that we have that list out of the way, let's go ahead and cover the steps in a little more detail. Step 1, clear the room. This is an important step because if there is furniture in the room, it'll be hard to maneuver with a paintbrush in your hand. Try to move as many things out of the room as possible. If you have things left, push them all to the middle of the room so you can walk around them easier. Step 2 is to remove everything from the walls. This can include outlet coverings, light switch coverings, coverings on the base boards. Remove things hanging on the walls as well. Remove nails or screws if possible for ease of painting. If the room is not majorly used room, you can also remove curtains and window coverings in order to not get paint on them or dust. Step 3 is possibly the most time-consuming besides painting. Covering holes and imperfections. Try to remember where paintings were and things that are hanging. These are the holes that we are targeting. You want to take your drywall and mud and take a little bit and put it on the spatula. You want to try to push it into the hole and smooth along the outside of it. You can take the sharp point of the spatula, normally on the end, and scrape it along the wall. This will remove excess from the wall. But as a side note, you want to remember that you want a tiny bit on the wall, so when you're sanding, you're not sanding drywall, you're actually sanding mud. After you have covered all the holes using the same method, look around the room for any dents or imperfections that might need filling. The same method is used that was applied to holes, but probably more mud will be needed as they tend to be larger. Don't be afraid of using too much mud, as this can be sanded down. Allow time to mud completely dry for sanding, or else you will mess it up and you'll have to start over. This is where the color changing comes in hand. If you don't have it, then you have to kind of guess and poke at it, and then you're going to have to do it over again. After you are sure the mud is completely dry, you're able to start sanding. Before you start sanding, you might want to put your drop cloth down as it gets pretty dusty, and if you have allergies or breathing problems, you might want to put a mask on. Okay, try to sand in a circular motion or in wide strokes. Otherwise, you're going to remove too much in one space and you're just going to have to put more mud back on. As you sand, run your opposite hand along the wall in a motion like this in order to tell if it's smooth. If you feel bumps under your hand, then you can go over it. It's just an easier way to tell. You shouldn't be able to feel a real big difference besides texture between the mud and the drywall. Continue to sanding all the holes and imperfections in the same manner. If you are unsure if the drywall is smooth, stand off to the side and look down the wall. You shouldn't be able to tell where the mud is. If you can, sand a little more till it's smooth. Repeat the mud sanding as needed. With the bigger holes, I would strongly suggest repeating to ensure proper coverage. Step 4 is after completing your sanding and mudding and sanding and mudding, you will want to tape off the trim work, molding, sealing, cover outlets so you don't get paint in them. You also want to cover off windows and anything extra. I suggest painter's tape. It's normally blue. It doesn't rip off the paint as you pull it back from baseboards and the like. I also would suggest thicker stuff if you drip or if you get really excited with your strokes, you won't get it on your baseboards. Step 5 is to cover floor if you didn't while sanding to protect anything from excess paint. Step 6 is for you to use the warm water in your cloth. Wipe the walls to remove any excess dust or dirt. The reason being is that if you leave any on the wall, it can get in your paint and cause lumps, and that can cause the finish to be different. After you are done with the final step, your room is ready to be painted. Just remember that sanding mud to be flush with the wall and cleaning the walls properly should be your biggest worry. The only thing left for you to do now is to pick a good primer and the perfect color that suits your taste.